I just want to sort of say, like, who'd have thought we would still be here, in this lockdown at this time? And it has so much become as well as a real physical pandemic, it has become a pandemic of psychological ill health too. So it's so hugely important that we're focusing on this topic today. As we go through, a couple of ground rules, as I always say, ground rules are here. Join in, ask questions. If you have experienced, if as we go through, you recognize any symptoms or signs of anxiety in yourself that have become like really quite overwhelming and worrying for you, please, it is your duty of care to yourself to reach out afterwards and get some support. You are so lucky at Skanska, to be fair, that you've got so much support there. I work for quite a lot of other organisations, and Skanska is one of the places that has the most support for mental health, whether it is your your EAP, whether it is Lily and the team, whether it's all the mental health teams that you've got, the champions. So please do not suffer by yourself. That's a hugely important part of what we're talking about today. And the reason we can just spend 45 minutes, an hour talking about it is because you have such great professional networks. Right, so next slide for me, Lily. I just also wanted just a shout out to the World Mental Health Day, really, because World Mental Health Day. So do you want to, is the next slide coming up, Lily? Just, is it frozen on my slide? Frozen. World Mental Health Day is not just about us. So World Mental Health Day is a partnership of 3 global organizations coming together. Do you want to
Mandy, has it come up?
It's not come up for me. Come up for has it come up for anyone else? Just let me know if you can. Can you see the next slide, everyone, or is it just
no?
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Great. So sorry, this is a bit wordy, everyone. I don't mean it to be wordy, but for those people who are saying, "What is World Mental Health Day? Why do we want to do it? What's going on?" This is the slide. Okay. So if you want to know the whys, the bigger, slightly more strategic-y people like why, then actually World Mental Health Day is a partnership of 3 organisations: World Health Organization, United for Global Health, and World Federation for Mental Health. And we know that in the UK here, we've got some really difficult stats. We talked about suicide last time. We're going to talk about anxiety today. But globally, it's a huge issue. We've got countries across the world where certainly suicide is still illegal. We've got countries across the world where if you have a mental health problem, your family will build another wall in your house, put you behind that wall and just put a locked gate there. We've got countries all over the world where people live with very, very serious alcohol issues, where suicide is very severe, and where basically they have very, very little support. And for those of you who are interested in the stats around this, depression is one of the biggest world health issues that we have completely globally. It's going to be the top world health issue by 2030. It is we're absolutely getting that way now. And if you think about depression, if you think about the leading sort of issue of our health at the moment, globally, it's probably cardiovascular stuff. We know so much about cardiovascular stuff. We know so much about what support is there, but it's going to be taken over by depression. It's going to be taken over by depression. So our knowledge of depression and our knowledge of mental health issues needs to be absolutely much, much more in focus globally as well as locally. And here in the UK, we are doing so much to help that. However, we still don't have parity. We still don't have parity of esteem with our physical health and our psychological health. We still don't have that. We've got quite a long way to go about the amount of money the government spends on physical health compared to the amount of money the government spends on psychological health. So I just want to pull out to you that it is a global issue, and that's what about World Mental Health Day is. So let's move us through. Let's focus back on us. That's what we're here to really sort of like get to the heart of. So When I was here with you before, you know, I used to do on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you feeling? I thought I'd shift it a little bit today for you and sort of think, actually, choose 3 of these feelings on the screen to tell me how you're feeling today. So I've given you 3 because, like, often we're not just feeling one thing. We're feeling one thing and another and another. So I'm feeling like excited back to be with Skanska because I really love working with Skanska. But I'm also feeling a little bit like, oh, a bit uncertain. Are we going to be okay? Also sort of feeling a little bit like bit busy. So just put some of the feelings that you are feeling here into the chat. And we are being recorded. I won't pick up anyone's names or anything. So please just feel comfortable if you can about putting in some of the things, 3 feelings that you are holding on to. Yeah, great. So thanks. So we're putting them up. Can you see, people, also what we're holding together is, well, sometimes we're holding together opposites. So we sometimes feel like optimistic, but we sometimes feel sad as well. So we can hold opposites together. Yeah, worried, but we also feel joy. So we can feel worried, but we also can feel thankful. When you are holding together opposite feelings, so feelings that you are both bored, but you at times, but you're also happy. Sometimes when you hold things opposites together, it takes a lot more energy from us to do that. So holding opposite feelings. So that's why people sort of like, when we're coming up to changes, coming up to maybe restructuring, we sort of like feel like I really, really like it here, but I'm really uncertain about the future. Holding opposites is really hard work. And I also think that for some people, when we talk about feelings, sometimes people don't have words to describe feelings. They know what they feel, but they don't necessarily have the words to describe it. Those of us who are a bit older, we did not come up through the school system, being asked to talk about feelings. That just did not happen. So those of us who are slightly older, we feelings, are sometimes talking about feelings has stigma, it's not something that we're familiar with. Whereas those people who have young people in their families, little tiny children, teenagers, people in their 20s, what you'll see is those people are actually much more comfortable talking about feelings than some of us slightly older people for whom it is it's still a journey. So there is a lot of differentiation in how comfortable we are with this. So I think the more we can just put these feelings out there and you can pick which feelings you want today. Sometimes it might be good to have this on a wall. We've got this lovely feelings charts that you can get, put them up there so that people can learn about feelings. And I would just, if there's a tiny little bit of homework that you want to do, just get that. Just do Googling feelings wheel, and there's this lovely colourful wheel. Put it on a poster in the room, and actually just from time to time you can get a little portable sticker that you can stick where you are. So sort of like just being educated about this feels really important. The other thing I'm noticing, though, can you see that what we've got on the chat here? I'm noticing that some people are really also struggling. So feeling a sense of being overwhelmed, plus anxiety, plus tired. And so you can have, the sort of like layers upon layer upon layer of really difficult feelings absolutely will make us feel anxious, and we'll have some of those signs and symptoms that we're going to talk about today. So thank you. And I hope by doing the self-awareness thing, what the purpose of doing self-awareness is always so that you can do something about it. So for those people who are really struggling, weary or tired, those people who are, busy but overwhelmed, the purpose of asking you how you are is not just to say, oh, how you are, like, okay, thanks, that's fine, but to say, how are you? And okay, I recognize that those are quite stressful feelings. What can you do about that to be able to manage it? Who can you talk to? How can you think about that differently? So please, the purpose of asking you how you are is to help you identify what's happening so that you can then do something about it. So that's my request to you by asking. Right. So Lily, shall we move on? Thank you. And also some people happy, optimistic and thankful. How lovely is that, by the way? So and people excited, quite a few people calm, busy. So, you know, absolutely that we've got positives and we've got some stress as well going on. Right. So we're here to talk about anxiety. I'd like to ask you to rethink anxiety for a second, because anxiety has always had a bad press. It's like anxiety is always seen as like negative. Oh, really difficult. Anxiety symptoms, it's horrible, it's debilitating. But do you know what? If we did not have our anxiety response, we would die. Our anxiety response is natural and we need it. We need that anxiety response to tell us that something isn't right. I want you to think about that carefully. I want you to think, right, I'm feeling anxious. That means something isn't right. That my anxiety response is telling me that I need to pay attention to myself and my environment, and I need to do something about it. What would happen if we didn't have that anxiety response? If we didn't have that anxiety response, we'd walk out in front of a car. We'd walk on our sights into a very dangerous place. We would maybe behave differently to people who we need to be thoughtful and watchful about. We need the anxiety response when we are in our safety critical areas. We need our anxiety response when we're bringing up our children. We need our anxiety response in our relationships, maybe to know that something isn't quite right. So I want you to think that anxiety, we need anxiety. We need that worry response. It is natural, it is essential for life. The anxiety response is designed to tell us that there is a problem. If we don't do anything about that problem, or the problem disappears and we still have the anxiety response, that's when it becomes a problem. So look, anxiety becomes a problem when our response is out of proportion to the actual danger of the situation, or when the danger is removed and we still have the anxiety response, that's when there's a problem. So I suppose what the little example of that, which I sometimes give, is sort of like, you know, people get anxious maybe before they get married. It's like, yeah, it's like, let's get anxious about the day. Will it run smoothly? Will the clothes be okay? Will the flowers arrive? Will this? So the anxiety about like people getting on with each other, natural time to be anxious. But after the wedding ceremony has gone and you are already married, are you still having anxiety symptoms? If you are, maybe something isn't quite right with yourself, with the relationship, with whatever. So actually, you need anxiety. It's essential. It's important. It sometimes it gives you the drive to do something about it. But then when the danger goes, when the danger is dissipated, your anxiety response should be dissipated as well. If it isn't, that's when there's a problem. Okay, next slide for me, Lily. Now, those people who are a bit maths, I thought I'd help you. People who love maths, people who love sort of like equations, statistics. This is my gift to you, because in mental health, it's like all woolly, it's all feelings, it's all, but actually, here you go, everyone. Here's the equation. Here's an equation for anxiety. Who'd have thought that we'd be doing maths as well as anxiety? But the equation is about anxiety. Anxiety is the result of two things happening, two massive big things happening. Number one, we see something out there that we are frightened of. Okay, so I'm going to get you to think about what that is in a minute. But we see stuff out there that we're frightened of. That could be coronavirus. It could be uncertainty about jobs. It could be our relationships. So we see something out there, all right, that we're frightened of. It's not just that. It's not just the stuff out there. It's how we see it. So it's an internal response as well. All right. So it's external perception of threat or danger plus the perception of our inability to cope with it. I won't be able to deal with it. That's going to be terrible. What's going to happen? That's going to be awful. The internal, the critic, the internal bit that you have equals anxiety. So I want you to think about this for a second, because you know what, we could have a different equation that says, okay, external perception of threat, coronavirus, plus what about if we perceive that we can manage it? What about if we feel that we can deal with it? Or what if we feel that actually we can overcome it? Then we don't get anxiety, even when the stuff out there is still the same. So even when the threats are still the same, if we feel that we can manage it, that we can cope with it, that we have resources to deal with it, that we have contacts with people who will help us, then we have a resilient approach rather than an anxiety approach. And I love this at one level, because what it means is that we've got two big ways of thinking about managing anxiety. Either we change the external, either we change the things out there. Do we change the coronavirus? Do you know what? We can't. So what can we change? Change the way we perceive it. That's how we think about how we can manage anxiety. So the other thing about this, which I think is helpful, is anxiety happens when we overestimate the danger, and underestimate our ability to manage it. So I want you to think in chat for me. What do you do? Are there things where you overestimate the danger and underestimate your ability to manage it? So just think about that. Is there things out there that you, like, I think probably for me, cycling, like I don't cycle at all, because what I do is I overestimate that if I get on a bike, I think I definitely feel I'm going to be run over. Like I'm overestimating that a bit. I think I'm definitely going to be run over, and I don't think I'm going to be able to manage the gears, and I don't think I'm going to be able to manage. So I never go out on a bike. Okay, that's how I deal with it, because I overestimate the danger and I underestimate our ability to manage it. Yeah, parenting. So someone has said, absolutely, parenting. We overestimate that our children will, need to go to bed at exactly the same time every night, otherwise their hair will fall out or whatever, or we won't be a good parent, and we underestimate our ability to keep that in check. Yes. Walking alone at night, yeah. I mean, Jane, it's a tricky one, walking alone at night, because I remember it, again, I'm a bit older, but do you remember when we had, I lived in a place where we did have, one person who was attacking people, and there was a thing from the government that said, tell all the women to stay inside and then they won't be attacked. Like, no, like that's ridiculous. Actually, what we need to do is get back on the streets and say, actually reclaim the streets. I don't know if anyone was part of that, but I certainly went on a march to reclaim the streets, that we can manage that, we don't need to hide from this. Yeah, presenting to large audiences. I love that one. Doing a presentation of anything, presenting to large, like poor Theresa May, when she had that coughing fit, it's unlikely we're going to be presenting to that many people. Yeah, flying is a good one, actually, isn't it? Because when you look at the evidence that you've got, that it's incredibly safe. In fact, going in a car is much more unsafe. But we overestimate the danger. Running in the winter months, delayed traveling to an important. I mean, being late, I think is a huge one as well. Overestimate how people are going to see us. So I think that is an interesting way. Again, my purpose for giving you this is that you've got a couple of ways of thinking about how you can address it. We can think about how we can properly estimate the danger. So if I think about the bike, maybe I do need to get a bit of my cycling proficiency test. Maybe I do need to get a bit of high-vis jackets on, but underestimate our ability to manage it. So that's when we can think, let's increase our own ability to manage the situation. So just a couple of ways of thinking about anxiety. So next slide for me, Lily. Now, let's think about coronavirus for a minute. Are we, in terms of our current situation? So remember, I think Lily, some of her presentations has sort of said to us that before coronavirus, we had 1 in 8 people 1 in 8 people in any group of people, 1 in 8 people who had already been to their GP to talk about anxiety. Now we have probably 3 times that. We have anxiety generally in our society at this moment in time. We have a lot more anxiety, a lot more people going to the GP to talk about that. Probably 50, it varies depending on what research you're looking at, but 40 to 50, so anything from 40 to 60% of people are reporting anxiety symptoms. Are we, is the government, are we creating more anxiety ourselves? Is our government giving us, not to have a go at the government, but is the messages that we're receiving about coronavirus, is that adding to our anxiety? Are we creating agoraphobia? Agoraphobia meaning like our fear of going out. What are we? Yes, so absolutely. So someone has said here, sometimes the media doesn't help with anxiety. To stop watching the news. Absolutely. We're sort of, I feel definitely that we are creating more anxiety. So look, overestimating the danger and underestimating our ability to cope. If you think about those things and you listen to people on the news, it's like, well, should we expose ourselves to it? How should we protect ourselves from it? You know, is closing our pubs at 10 o'clock at night the right thing to do? Is that, you know, so press and social media, absolutely. David, you know, you are so right that we are getting, and also being in our homes, looking at where we're getting information from, we're getting it much more from the media than we are from the people around us. Those people who are working from home, sorry, and I know some of you are absolutely with your teams, but actually when you're working from home, we've not got the people around us to measure, to manage and measure our responses to danger. We've not got that. We're looking to the news, we're looking to the newspapers. We've not got the everyday stuff we have with people to help us balance our thoughts. So my concern is that we're creating more and more and more anxiety within our children as well, in schools, within our teenagers, within ourselves. So I feel doing a session on anxiety, Lily, and doing as many stuff on anxiety is so important, because otherwise my concern is that everyone begins to overestimate the danger in everything and underestimate our ability to cope with it. And that's my real concern. And that's why I think that we have got over 50, 60% of people struggling with anxiety. Okay, right, good. So people are concerned about the news, with that negativity rubbing off, on the children, absolutely. So next slide for me, if we can. Shall we do some neuroscience? This is just 2 minutes of neuroscience where we could spend the whole time on this, to be honest, but let's just do it. Let's just do it. Those people who've worked with me before, you've heard me talk about this. So where you can learn more about neuroscience of anxiety is some fantastic websites. I'm just going to put, actually, Lily, I don't know if you can do this. I don't know if you can do this, or maybe I'll just do it myself. Can you write in chat, Lily, or shall I? Because I know you're doing the slides. That might be tricky, but yeah. So yeah.
No, I can't. Sorry. So
okay, don't worry. I'll do it.
Okay.
Don't worry. Thank you. Right. So neuroscience. Basically, you can read more about it. www.Hey Sigmund. I may have talked to you about that before. It's my favorite website for understanding anxiety. It's actually for teens and children, but the language is just brilliant. So I'd please urge you to do that. Also, Young Minds. I know I'm focusing on the children, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute, because when we are anxious, we're regressed. So actually have nice, easy language to think about anxiety is brilliant. So let's think about anxiety. So basically, 2 parts of the brain for us to think about today, just 2 parts. That lovely big frontal cortex at the front, prefrontal cortex. It takes us 25 years to develop that part of our brain. It has some really important stuff in it for dealing with the complex issues of today. It has our ability to make goals, to plan, to do, to listen to other people. That bit of our brain is able to use our past experience and our intelligence. But the other thing that part of our brain does is it is changed. The brain is changed there when we have input from someone else. So if I'm talking to Lily, for example, and I'm focused, I'm using my frontal cortex, and she says to me, Mwandi, this has happened and this has happened, so I think you should do this and I think you should do this. My brain is changing and I'm thinking, okay, I'll incorporate that in it and I'll incorporate that in it. If I am focused on the primitive brain, I'll come to that in a second, and Lily is talking to me, I'm saying, no, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. So when someone is not able to listen to you in full capacity of themselves, when someone's not listening, when someone's saying yes but, when someone is really not there and taking on board what you're saying, sort of like don't keep on, don't keep shouting more, don't keep pushing more, because they're not in a place to hear it. When they're in the frontal cortex, their brain is changed by hearing other people and by absorbing other people. So the more, if you're in a stressed place sometimes, don't sort of like listen to a webinar, go and actually do some exercise or do some mindfulness. And then when you're in a calmer place, then listen to the webinar, because otherwise you won't be taking it in. Have you ever like been in a bit of an anxious place and tried to read your books, and you try to read your books and you just read the same page over and over and over and over again? And that's often because we're not in that the frontal cortex part of our brain to be able to take it on board. So this current situation that we need, it means we want to work as hard as we can to keep in that executive brain. But we're talking about anxiety today. And what happens is when we feel under threat, now feeling under threat, what that means is when we feel under threat, normally we would feel under threat when we see really awful, sort of like frightening things outside. So we would see like a bear coming towards us or a wild animal coming towards us, and our threat response would say, act, 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 frightening, frightening, frightening. But guess what? The psychological threat of this really happens when we feel that we might be a failure, when we feel that we might let people down. Let me just put that in. When we feel that we might be rejected. That threat response of rejection is very close in the brain to our physical pain response, which is why when we feel rejected, we feel physical pain sometimes as well. And it's a very strong feeling. So feeling failure, feeling that we might let people down, feeling that we're rejected, feeling that we will be badly judged. Okay, that's such a hard one, by the way, feeling badly judged in coronavirus time. For me, working from home, been working from home all the time. No one can say to me at the end of a session, oh, well done, Mandy, that's good. I don't get any, do not get any sort of like reassurance that you've done a good job. And so you worry that you might have, it's not as good as it could be. So I want you to look at those four things. Those four psychological things are the ones that tip us out of that frontal cortex and into our primitive brain. And Michelle has put a really good comment on the chat here. There's a program on Netflix called The Mind Explains. It's interesting. Lovely. Thanks. That's really, really good. Yeah, great. So lots of places where you can get hold of this. But I think as a visual person, as a visual learner, what I want you to imagine is when you feel anxious, you feel threatened, what I want you to think is that you've stopped processing things from your frontal cortex and your neurons are stimulated to start that primitive brain going into absolute hijack. Okay, so that anxiety can sometimes be called amygdala hijack. Amygdala is actually Latin for almond, two little almond-shaped bits at the back of the head, back of the brain. They are formed first. If anyone has toddlers, you will know that toddlers are all primitive brain. It's just that they want it and they want it now. And if they don't want to put their shoes on, they won't put their shoes on, regardless of if you're late. So actually, that primitive brain is responsible for our anxiety response. It tells our adrenal glands, the sort of cortisol that's produced, tells our adrenal glands to produce adrenaline. So one of the things I'd like to ask you to do for a second is when you think in your mind, I want you to think about going from that frontal cortex to that primitive brain. In the short moment, how do you know you have gone into that anxiety response? How do you know you've done it? Just type it in. How do you know? Is it in your mind? Like, like hot, that all sort of like feeling? Is it in your heart? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your tummy? How do you know you have developed, not, now there's some comments here. Just on the neuroscience, there's a fantastic nerve, called the vagal nerve that goes from the back of your brain to your tummy. Okay? So when our little children get tummy ache when they are nervous about school, it is real, everyone. It is real, because there's a nerve that goes, so your primitive brain there sends nervous things to your tummy, and it tells your tummy actually to empty out, get yourself as ready as you can to run after or to run away from the threat. So does anyone have, let me just see this. So we've got some great responses. Biting jaw, I'm going to come to that in a second. That's a really interesting response there. Anyone have, quite a lot of those tummy things where you feel nauseous, where you feel like you want to go to the toilet? We used to call this, when we have to do presentations and we had diarrhea when you have to do presentations, it's like, I've got to go to the toilet, I've got to go to the toilet. We used to call it presentation poo, because actually it's like our adrenaline, like that might be too much information for a recording. Sorry, anyone who's listening to this. But anyway, so actually too much, your whole stuff would empty out. Yeah, not in the tummy. Fight or flight, trembling hands, sweating, shaking. Great, good. I want you to just be aware that this is a natural and important response. I know we don't like it, but it says something isn't right. We're feeling anxious. We need to do something about it. So it's really important that you know your immediate response, because so many of us don't know that immediate response, and we cover it up. What do you sometimes cover up your immediate response with? Anyone? What do we just, because those immediate responses are horrible, they're horrible. So what do we reach for to cover that up rather than to take notice? Any thoughts? Just give me the next slide a minute. Laughter, Sally, that's a great one. Yeah, like talking, blah, 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 blah. Absolutely, talking. Does anyone cover it up with a chocolate biscuit? Does humor? Yeah. Does anyone cover it up with a gin and tonic? Does anyone cover it up? Cigarettes? Yes, cigarettes. Yeah, eating. Food. Yeah. How's the croissant? Like, yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like we cover it up with things to sort of lower it, rather than think, yeah, I need a food, glorious food, rather than thinking, right, this is telling me something. What am I going to do about it? So be careful that in the immediate response, you might take that for, you will have your gin and tonic, or you'll have your food, but you still need to do something about the feeling of being under threat, the feeling of the failure, the feeling of letting people down. So that anxiety response, which originated mindless TV. So yeah, I'm with you on mindless TV, but when you're really anxious, even those lovely TV programs that used to take it away, they don't work. It sort of doesn't work for you. I remember I went through a particularly anxious time, because I used to love Silent Witness, and I used to watch Silent Witness like, yo, lovely, like have a cup of tea, you sit down and watch it. And I remember watching it and thinking, this is not going in anywhere. I'm really not enjoying this. I can really feel that knot in my tummy still. My shoulders are up. So actually your anxiety, when the anxiety gets so bad, all of these things are sometimes don't work. So because they are helpers to help us manage those immediate responses, not deal with the issue. Loud music, scrolling through the phone, absolutely. And internet, like social media, how much has that given us other ways of managing it, of just managing those immediate responses? So remember, immediate response is a natural thing. It says to the body, get ready. And remember, this is our primitive part of the brain, fit for purpose when we lived in caves. When we lived in caves, the most important thing our anxiety response should be to help us run away or hide, fight or flight, freeze or flop. So here is your response. I'm not going to go through it all, but can you see how it gets yourself ready to get going? So you fast talk, your pupils dilate, increase in heart rate. Primitive brain also doesn't talk much, okay? It doesn't, it has a few words, which why sometimes when people are angry, they shout at you in short words like, do it now. They don't sort of shout in a way that says, they don't shout. I was just trying to shout then in a sensible way, like, look, I can see that things are really difficult at the moment. We've got quite a lot on. We need to manage the uncertainty. You can't really shout. When you shout, it's just do it and do it now. So that shouting that we get sometimes is short bursts of words. Whereas when you, in the frontal cortex, you can use words much more effectively. So that's why, in a way, shouting is just blurting out the odd word here and there. Also, in relation to violence, sometimes one of the things about anxiety, really interesting during coronavirus, people who live in relationships, people have partnerships. Before coronavirus, we had about 19% of people who lived in relationships were anxious. Okay, so sometimes the relationship helped to manage that, but not interestingly, we had, after coronavirus, that number increased to 39%. So people in relationships had a lot more anxiety, and it's as if that the people around them were no longer helping them with their normal anxiety. The people around them were causing that anxiety, which is interesting, isn't it? So actually, I mean, loneliness is another big thing about anxiety, but relationships during coronavirus has increased. So shouting, domestic violence, all increased, because the people close to us were causing us to sort of like feel a failure, feel that we'd let people down, feel rejection, feel that they were just in too close sort of like environment to be able to support us. So the purpose of us saying this is that anxiety response comes from that fight or flight, or freeze or flop, like holding together, like, Urgh. I know someone said, their jaw sticks together and their teeth, they start to do their teeth. Actually, yeah, let's do the next slide, Lily. List of ground teeth. Because look, it is not just physical responses, that adrenaline response does psychological things so that we think differently. Does anyone think sometimes when you're anxious that everyone around you can see through you? Yeah, I love that. Having a punch bag workout, great. Yeah. Shopping. So someone else has put shopping on, that there's a way to manage that immediate response. I'm with you there. And you know what? It doesn't really help. I've got like wardrobes full of evidence that shopping doesn't actually help. But anyway, so let's go back to other signs and symptoms of anxiety, not just physical, but look at the psychological one. Does anyone sometimes feel when you're anxious that people can see through you? They can see through your skin. They can almost see how you're feeling. They can see that blood rising up in you, that oxygen like pumping through your body. They can see you sort of like panicking. And it's almost as if we lose our defenses. Yeah, it's such a horrible feeling, isn't it? That people, that you're thinking about that, you jump to conclusions, you jump to real difficult, you jump to catastrophic conclusions, thinking that it's all over, you might die, sort of thinking that cycle, that cycle of awfulness. That this is going to happen, and then I'm going to lose. Then that's going to. I'm going to lose my job, and I haven't got any money, and then I'm going to. My family will be destitute, and then I'll be going to prison, and then I'll die. And like, no, let's stop that. We can notice that we're anxiety ridden. So let's go back to our equation. Are we overestimating the danger, and are we underestimating our ability to cope? So whenever you have these feelings, one of the most important things is to go back to that equation. How am I estimating my ability to get through this? So here you've got behaviors as well. I'm sure other people have different behaviors. Jittery, can't speak. We've sort of talked about that, like shopping, like cleaning, absolutely. And feelings, those feelings, feeling exposed, feeling vulnerable, feeling as though everything is either going really quickly or slowing down really quickly, like time just speeds up, or like the moments going slowly. If you're doing a presentation, you sort of start by thinking, gosh, I've been talking for a long time, but only like 1 minute has gone. It's like, oh my God. So sort of time goes in different ways because our brain is working really, really fast. One part of our brain is working at fast speed, but another part of the brain is not working at all and is trying to hold those two things together. So yeah, so someone has said a really good thing, that they need to speak to people, because otherwise the catastrophes will end up, with a huge, that the best thing is to be able to, well, there's lots of things we can do, to be fair, talking, exercise, breathing, but actually to get that, to check your responses with someone else, with something else, so that you don't get lost in your own anxiety. That's such a really difficult thing. I had a phone call this morning. I was doing some individual work this morning, and someone was saying, I live by myself here. I'm in London. I'm working from home, but I just had this, I had a panic attack at home on my own, thinking that if I fell or had a heart attack, no one would find me forever. No one would find me. So sort of like, okay, so how can we manage that? How can we put things into place? She said forever, because the anxiety makes us think much bigger issues than actually is really happening for us, because it's our primitive brain that's dealing with it. Primitive brain doesn't have much thought, and all the blood flow is going to primitive and bypassing frontal cortex. So our ability to think, ability to concentrate, ability to focus really gets lost in that anxiety that is fueling your response. Okay, so let's go forward, Lily, because I just want to get on to what we can do about it. Great, everyone. So I'd like to ask you, so Lily, I can see you here, and I'm going to be a little tiny bit like requesting of you here. Here are 10 tips to managing stress in the moment. So if you're feeling anxious, everyone, what I'd love you to do, so Lily, I just want to practice this. You don't have to stand up if you're on the computer, but I want you to do that wide position stretch. Arms up, everyone, arms up. So those people who are sitting, great. Look how massively brilliant stretch that is, Lily. Arms up. This position, okay, lovely big stretch. This position lowers our stress hormones, lowers our anxiety, and increases testosterone. That increases our estimation of our ability. Okay, that's fine. Have a little shake. So wide position, so you feel anxious, get those arms up. Right, smile, not grinding your teeth, smiling. That tells your body you're safe. Back up straight. Now, let's do a little bit of breathing. I know I've got a couple important slides to get to, but I'd like to take us, because I know how responsive you are, I'd like to do a little exercise with you on breathing to help with anxiety. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I want you to just breathe normally, okay? Breathe normally, and I want you to count the number of breaths that you do in that 30 seconds, all right? And a breath is in, out, like, that's one. Okay. So just breathe for 30 seconds, count the number of breaths, and then I'm going to ask you to put in chat how many breaths. Right, go. And stop. Okay, that was 30 seconds. Just get in chat. How many breaths did you take? Because that's just normal breathing. So Lily, how many for you? So 8. We've got 8. 8, good. Lily?
Sorry, I did 12.
12, good. It's healthy. Don't worry. 12, 11, like 9, 8. Keep going. Let me see how many breaths you're doing. 17, Laura. Okay, I think this exercise is going to be good for you, Laura. Okay. Darren, 5. Good. Okay. Right. If you've put it in, now 20, Sadia. Okay, Sadia, for you. So what we're going to do now, I want you to sit back in your seat. Get your seat in a nice, if you're sitting or if you're standing, just be really nice and comfy. I want you to feel your feet on the floor. I want you to feel your bottom in the chair, shoulders back. Feel the weight of your head on your shoulders. Just put your shoulders down. Hands on your lap if you want to. You can close your eyes if you want, but you don't have to. Now, for another 30 seconds, all you're going to do is to breathe in as slowly as you can through your nose. Hold it for as long as you can, and out through your mouth. Don't feel faint, everyone. Don't feel faint. Just in and out. And you're going to do 30 seconds again. I want you to count again, and I want you to try and do the fewest number of breaths that you can. You're only doing it with yourself. We're not competing with anyone else. So sit comfortably, sit relaxed, the fewest number of breaths for 30 seconds. Off we go. And stop. Right, put up. How many? So, Lily, you had 12 before. How many this time?
I did 5 this time.
Right, look, Sophia, 3, 2. How clever. Right, how are you feeling? Just check in. So, Lily, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I just feel more relaxed and just a bit more focused.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking about loads of different things.
Right, and that's 30 seconds. That's 30 seconds. If you feel tired, anyone, if you're like falling asleep, just do the Y shape again. That'll get you a bit energized, or do a couple of star jumps just in case, because we've got to do work, everyone. Can't go to sleep now. Right, but look at that, everyone. Look at how the numbers go down. Jill, 2.5. That's fantastic. And you can do that for a minute. I did it for 30 seconds. The point about this is you lower your heart rate. You literally take your thinking from the primitive brain back to the frontal cortex. You'll feel more focused. You give your brain and your nose and your lungs, you give them time to take in exactly the right amount of oxygen that you need. Well done, everyone. So that's me sort of teaching you the moments that you can manage that anxiety to get you ready to think. Does anyone else have immediate things that they love to do? So I know that we've got like punching the bag. I know that, but I want you to now come to the positive things of what really helps you in the short term. Laughing is good. Meditation, great. Mindfulness, I've just talked to you a little bit, using Headspace, Calm, or any apps. Massage, if you rub your skin like that, actually, that really helps. It gets the nerve endings calmer. Talking clearly. Stroll in the garden. Right. What I'd love you to do, keep going, is what I'd love you to do, just go to the next slide, Lily, because I'm just mindful of our time. I don't want to keep people over. Do you remember me telling you that the equation, walking, star jumps, Jack, lovely, I'm with you on the star jumps, right. Can I remember me telling you about the inner thinking about this? I want you to think about how you think when you are anxious, because many of us have a bit of an inner dictator. Does anyone, look, Jane does some dancing. I'm loving that, Jane, I'm loving that. Right. Does any of you have an inner dictator that says, you're not good enough, you should have done that better, should have done that quicker, should have done it now, should have. If you have an inner dictator, and I've used the word dictator just to get the message a point that it is like a bit harsh and a little bit negative. Yeah. So the inner dictator will add to your anxiety. If you recognize on the left-hand side of the slide here, so the sort of dictator that says you must be perfect, you must get it right, don't ask for help, you must be liked all the time, that will add to anything that's on the outside, that any of the problems like the children, like our children can cause us difficulty. But if you have the perfectionist, I must be the perfect mum, I must be the perfect dad. If we always want to be liked, I must be like, you must be liked, they must like you, you must do this, that will add to your anxiety. Yeah, so great. So look at this lovely one here. I won't name it, like Shadow. I want to feel good. I absolutely love that. We should definitely take that. I'm going to take that one. But what I want to offer you in terms of managing anxiety is the words on the right hand side. So actually think this, the coronavirus, it's really difficult. You know, restructuring in work is really difficult. But do you know what? I don't have to solve the problems all by myself. sometimes other people can be helpful to me. I don't have to, sometimes people can find solutions for themselves with my help. That's a good one for managers. I don't always have to be the highest achiever. I can still be talented and capable without being the best. Guess what part, the part of the brain that has the words on the right-hand side is our frontal cortex. I really want you to practice recognizing that our inner dictator comes from the messages we received when we were children. Okay, we're not children now. We're adult, grown up. Anxiety is often related to some childhood thoughts that we had. I need to do it right. I need to do it right. I need to do it right. I need to get my spellings right. I need to be good for the teacher. No, we need to remember as grown-ups now that we can deal with this. We can reach out. We can ask for help. So that inner dialogue is so important, that the positive mantra, I can deal with this. I can do well. I can reach out. So on the next slide, Lily, which is my, the important thing about actually the maintaining control of what we feel anxious about. And actually, I'm just going to come back to that slide in a second because I pick it up in the next slide, Lily. I just want to just be mindful of time. So look, here are your 10 things that you can absolutely do to manage anxiety. And you're already limiting the triggers, good. Understanding the processes, that's what we've done today, good. Learning mindfulness, you're doing that, you've got that there. Make exercise and movement a priority. Be aware of your inner dictator. That will add to your anxiety response. Develop a positive mantra. I'd love in the last couple of minutes, everyone, for you to get a positive mantra that you can say to yourself when anxiety stuff comes your way. So when you're feeling anxious, the positive mantra will be things like, I've got this covered. I'm a good person. Regardless of what happens, I'm still a good person. So let's have let's have your positive mantras out here. So if we were going to sort of like, we've got a question here. Notice how things like tiredness and hunger impact anxiety. Absolutely, because they send you into that primitive brain. So anything that causes you to be in the primitive response, adrenaline is being produced. So hunger, anger, loneliness, and being tired. So so we've got lovely ones here. Jane, I can do this. I've got this covered. It's not the end if it doesn't work. So this is our positive mantra. You really, really need to develop this to manage anxiety. And if this is, I choose to be calm. I choose to be happy. I choose to be grateful. Look at that. Overcome the stigma of asking for help. Alfie, brilliant. So remember that we've got previous experience. Look at the bigger picture. If not today, there's tomorrow. That's fantastic. Good. Professionals are really helpful in anxiety. Websites, and I'm not afraid to do medication either. So medication, we've got Trisha on the line here. Medication can be really helpful sometimes to get your anxiety from that really horrible place down to a place where you can ask for help as well. This too shall pass. That's fantastic. But then look at number 7. If there are people, talk to the people who are causing you that anxiety. But please don't do it straight away as a result of this webinar. Maybe phone the EAP and talk about it, or talk to your colleagues or friends. I'm going to talk to that person. I'm going to tell them. If you're in a difficult relationship, a violent relationship, get some support for how to raise that first before you raise it. Yeah. So look, Luke, challenges are opportunities for growth and experience, not something to be afraid of. That's lovely. Well, another time we'll talk about positive growth mindset, which actually says, do you know what? It didn't work out last time, but do you know what? There's another time, and we can learn and grow from it. So listen, Lily, I'm on 11:30. I don't want people to go over, but I hope that's just been a bit of a snapshot of anxiety response.
Absolutely. Right.
I'm happy to stay on, by the way.
Sorry, I'm not on mute. So, that was amazing, Mandy. Thank you. It was really, really good to listen to that, and quite, very insightful, and good to understand anxiety better, because I think it's easy to fear it when you don't know a huge amount about it as well. It can be quite a daunting thing, can't it? So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, so look. Also, just a really quick thing that we've got. Any medication and things which help you, websites. Just reach out. We're so lucky to live in this current environment where we've got so many things that will help us. So thank you, sir, and also everyone. Your responses are brilliant. So keep on that breathing. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm loving it.
Mandy, I think there's something to say about it, having a toolkit, isn't it? Because some things will work sometimes and other times they don't work as well. So it's actually having all those things that you know do help and trying them out or putting them all together.
And doing a bit. So this time, Tricia, that's a good. There's so many things that are causing us anxiety. So we need to add to our toolkit a bit. So we just need to add a few more tools. So that's why I've got that 10 things to add more at the moment. Everyone needs more at the moment. Great, thanks.
Great session, Mandy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll share the recording, but also share some resources after this that Mandy's added on the end here as well. So thank you everyone for joining and taking part.
Great, lovely. Thanks for all your responses. All right, have a good weekend. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.